In November, Massachusetts voters will decide whether or not to raise the minimum wage for restaurant workers from $6.75 to $15 an hour. A yes vote on question 5 would make the change. A no vote would keep things the same. We spoke to 2 industry workers with different views on the issues to get a snapshot of the debate.
So my name is Claudia Bennett. I'm an artist in Boston. I work 40 hours a week in theater, and I also work about 15-20 hours a week in a restaurant as a server.
Why are we having this conversation today, Claudia?
So I'm here to talk about the ballot for one fair wage, to basically working to raise the minimum wage for servers, for all tipped workers. So at my job as a server, I make $6.75 an hour. Realistically, $6.75 an hour is really just what you're paying in taxes. So at the end of the day, my paycheck is primarily tips. But when people don't tip me, that's really challenging because I'm basically just making pennies at that point.
To give people a little bit more clarity, working behind this bar, about how much are you bringing home?
I'm making enough to make all my ends meet and then some. So I'm able to help my family. I'm able to put aside a little bit more than I had in my previous jobs in terms of like training and management and security. Like I'm able to be a lot more flexible with how I live and my lifestyle.
So then, do you feel that if the wages for servers were increased, that would eat into your tips or mess up your ecosystem?
I think possibly it would, because it's gonna be an adjustment period to start. But I think eventually, I think people will start to tip less. Now you're coming here, you might have to pay $20 for a burger that was originally $7 to $8. The costs have to be made up somewhere. It's not just gonna come out of the sky like, hey, now we're gonna pay everybody all this money and now everything's gonna be okay.
Claudia, you talk about an affinity for restaurants and having worked in the service industry for quite a while. What is your history with it?
So I am from Oregon, and Oregon does not have a server's wage. So people in Oregon make minimum wage, which back when I was still living there was $13 an hour. But I grew up with a single mom, and she raised me entirely working in restaurants and in service jobs. And there is just no way she would have been able to do that if it wasn't for that additional money. It was so important. And I've never had a child, but I can only imagine that's really challenging, having to take care of someone else and not knowing exactly how much money you're going to be getting per month. So,
this initiative is personal to you then?
It definitely is.
The idea of tips, right? Compensating you for the incredible service you give, how important is that to your everyday life?
It's huge. It allows me to pay my bills, put food in my belly, fund my sneaker obsession and my desire to travel as often as possible. So it's huge, man.
So the cost of food is up, the cost of transportation of that food is up. Do the restaurant owners have a viable argument saying our costs are up as well, our margins are very slim, paying our servers a higher minimum wage plus what they get on tips would put a lot of restaurants out of business?
If you can't, if you can't afford to pay your employees, like, you shouldn't have a business, in my opinion. I think that relying on other people to pay your employees is just not sustainable. If someone walks in and I greet them and I'm their server, and I'm acting as the face of the restaurant, so I believe that I should be compensated for that time and effort.